And I'll tell you now, I'm feeling very fragile. Very fragile is not quite the right word. Tender as I begin this. So let's take a moment just to ground ourselves. And being here in this moment. And not just in this moment, in this day, but this moment in our lifetime, this moment in humanity's evolution, this intersection that sort of spreads out, not just from the minute and the location, but in historical relevance. These are very remarkable times that we're in. And they can be very intense. And part of the reason they can be so intense, especially to those of us who have been sort of awakening more and more, is that as we develop the capacity to expand more and experience more, as we do that, things from deeper within can come up to be included in this healing time of awakening. And that sometimes I find, and a lot of people find, that the longer we go without anything coming up, it's a little bit traumatic, a little bit more traumatic when things come up, and it feels more intense. And part of the reason is the juxtaposition is so sharp between our newfound or evolving calmness or calmer kind of state and a difficulty that comes up. And the difficulties that come up are often more intense in form because they're at a deeper layer, they're more of a foundational kind of issue that we're dealing with. So these can be very, very intense times. And it happens to be that in the last 3 days, I've spoken very deeply and very honestly with 3 different people in 3 different days. A couple of them for successive days, who are dealing with suicide or suicidal ideation. And a couple of them pretty seriously. Not pretty seriously, very seriously. And these are people, each of them, that by any standards in this world we would consider quite enlightened. I'm feeling very tender because I've been holding this with them. So I think it calls into this present moment the need for us to make sure that we have an intention to kind of create a baseline capacity within us to manage these wide swings or the intensities of these things as we have more things shifting and evolving. And so that's what I want to talk about tonight. There's several of my teachings that are going to come together in this. And I don't quite know how yet, but I can feel it, that there's several avenues into this focal point of consideration tonight. But I want to begin by making sure that we all hold in this space a great deal of compassion for ourselves and for others and for humanity. And remembering that the times that we are in is not just that we are moving into this expanded awareness, but we are coming out of intense things. And there's a feeling of us sort of standing in a doorway almost, that we are in fact that doorway through which things are processing and transforming. And until they are transformed, or as they are transformed, we are going to experience some of these things. We will necessarily encounter some of these intensities. So if we can create that doorway as a compassionate passing through or engagement area, it will help. I think the easiest way to do this is going to be to drop into a meditation so that we feel more of what I'm saying than we are listening to it. So let's begin with a nice dropping in to this present moment, to this space that we're in. The gift of being here together. Becoming aware of all that is here in this moment, the place that we're in, all that we can hear and feel, the intention that is here. The strength that we have here. Feel ourselves just uniting with all of this awareness, helping it ground us and root us right here. All of this awareness anchoring us into this moment. I'm going to take a nice deep breath in. And just feel ourselves relaxing into this moment. Feeling our body energy relax. Feeling our mind energy relax. allowing every bit of us to simply be in the receiving state here tonight. We're not needing anything or expecting anything. We are just simply allowing what is in this time and space with us to be known. And this focus tonight is really about being able to take care of ourselves and thereby being able to take care of others. Being able to recognize the capacity that we have within, the tools that we have within, the willingness that we have within. To see our way through all that is unfolding. To have great compassion for what arises. And have great compassion for ourselves in dealing with what arises. To take ownership of our power. To take ownership of our choices. Take ownership of our self-care. And to be able to do that in a way systematically that creates a new baseline within us, so that our baseline is not the old way of coping or dealing or engaging with difficult things, old patterns, but that we allow a new foundation, a new baseline to be created. And the first part of that is recognizing where we are now. And this goes back to my teachings of how am I showing up in this moment? How am I showing up in the moments where I'm not thinking about the intention of dropping in and feeling what's happening? What's my baseline? How am I showing up? What is my baseline in the just conditioned way of going about my day? From the moment I wake up to how I'm walking and down the street or engaging in the grocery store, what is my baseline? What's circulating within me? And in what ways am I allowing that baseline to be in alignment with my greatest potential, with my divine nature, with that which I really want to be in this world, in this lifetime, in this moment? So step one is being honest in the recognition of our baseline, in how we show up each day. Now, a key part of this is understanding what we are doing with our thoughts and our feelings, what we are claiming, what we are bonding to out of conditioned habit. I said last week that a thought is a pattern. In the exact same way that we perceive other patterns, patterns of sight and sound, comprehension. I use the example of a letter being a particular pattern. The shape is in a particular pattern. We associate a letter and a sound with that pattern. And several of those patterns put together is the pattern of a word. And we associate a definition with that word. And several words together are another pattern, and we associate a context, a phrase, a story in that sentence, in that paragraph, in that chapter. And a thought is the exact same way. It is a pattern of things that is interpreted by us as a sentence, as a phrase, as a context, as a word, as a feeling, as an emotion. The difference with a thought is that we attach to it as though it is us. It is our thought. It's a pattern in the energetic field in which we are engaged, that we have bonded to, that we have claimed as ours. And the equivalent of that with letters and words and sentences is if we had entered a chapter in a book and claimed that story as us. But because it's happening internally rather than externally in terms of our perception, we don't think twice about it. We say, I am happy, I am sad, I have this thought. We claim it. We bond with that pattern, holding it within us. And then we have an engagement with it of why am I thinking this thought? Or I shouldn't be thinking this thought. What does this mean? And all we're doing is bonding even more and even more and even more. There's the presence of the pattern that we perceive, and then our interweaving ourselves with that pattern. I used the example last week of Velcro. So we just adhere ourselves to these thoughts, to these emotions. This is what we've always done. This is how it works here. How it has always been done, without a recognition of what we're doing. So when we come back into the intention to be the presence of divine love, to be the presence of pure awareness, we understand what is happening internally in that alignment, in the observation or the witness to the patterns that we perceive as thoughts and emotions and feelings. That they can well up powerfully within us, but they are simply a pattern we are aware of. And oftentimes these very intense patterns that rise up, they're tethered to a lot of old other patterns within us. It's just a big tangled mess. There's a lot of things embedded in that Velcro. So when we identify the honest truth of how am I showing up, we will find all the ways that we've adhered or claimed or bonded to all of these old patterns. And the very first step in being able to release ourselves and our identity from these is to recognize that. Is to compassionately see what our part is in the choosing unconsciously to be identified with and as these thoughts. That recognition alone begins to transform that pattern. You can think of it like the pattern of a song that gets stuck in your head. You can jump in with that music and just sing along and just yield to it. Or you can recognize that you have the song stuck in your head. You can sink back in, you can do something else. But we recognize here that we have a choice. And the old choices feel like magnetic pulls into these old patterns. And that makes us think that we don't have any control over this. And as we develop our capacity to disentangle, in many ways it creates an even stronger pull from those old patterns as the mind kicks in and needs to stay safe, needs to keep itself safe from any risk, which is how it was created in the first place. So because of the intensity and the deeply old patterns of conditioned response and baseline activities within us, it's easiest for us to practice the disentanglement with thoughts that are not so weighty, that are not so old patterns, then help us just create that ability within us to respond as an awareness that we are not this thought. We don't have to indulge the thought. We can embrace it. Yes, it's here. Yes, I hear this song stuck in my head, but I don't have to sing along. I don't have to add my side of the Velcro. So rather than trying to tackle the biggest, oldest patterns, we can begin to have this checking in, this centering and dropping back into the awareness state with the simplest of thoughts in our day. As we drink our coffee and have an opinion about the coffee or the need for coffee, Pulling back in and just being aware that there is a thought about coffee. It's not mine. I can have that thought again if I want. I can let it go if I want. I can do something with that thought and take it even further, whether I want something in my coffee, whether I want coffee yet, whether I want another cup of coffee. Or I can focus my awareness inward into being the state of awareness, observing this thought, with the intention to align myself with my divine nature. That thought is no more important or less important than anything. It's simply a thought. It's simply a sentence in a book that's just passed me by. Same thing about the weather, about a task, about an opinion, about the news. Using any kind of mundane thoughts as tools, as practices to keep bringing ourselves back into the witness state, back into the witness state, back into alignment. And recognizing what we are intentionally choosing in our day to bring into our field, to focus on, to bond with, to interweave with, to be identified with, and spending this time in this energy field in this moment. What am I listening to? What am I reading? What am I indulging? Is what I am indulging helping me in my path? And which part is it helping? The mind, or that which is aware of the mind? Am I giving my mind more to adhere to, or am I giving myself my space for things to come up, to rise up naturally in the knowing? The ego will find many thoughts with the purpose of awakening. And we will see that those thoughts are usually something for it to do, as opposed to something for it to be. As we practice this centering and coming back into the witness state, intentionally not adhering to the thoughts, not claiming these thoughts as mine or me, not claiming these emotions or feelings as mine or me, but something that is passing through this energy field. We can more and more and more check into, how am I showing up in this moment? Recognizing that we have the choice every time that we come back with an intentional focus of our awareness into the centering state as witness. We're creating our foundations. We're conditioning our baseline. We're reminding our energy field what it feels like to be centered, to be aligned, to be allowing. to be embracing without indulging. Remember that we have an energy field that is conditioned to adhere, conditioned to evaluate. We're allowing all of that to be set free. It's always a choice, and we can choose to center. Simply aware of all that is in this moment. This is very much about an energy architecture that we're shifting, creating within our own energy field, our own energy body, permission to expand, permission to explore anew in a more unitive way. Not a conceptual way, but a being way. With all that is, and not a doing way with our thoughts. So as we check into frequently, how am I showing up in this moment? Recognizing the patterns of thought that we're adhering to. Simply letting ourselves center back in, release, and witness. Practicing with the more mundane, easier thoughts that we have. We're increasing our capacity for when those intensities come around. The things that really well up with force, with insistency. That's begging us to understand, to judge, to figure out, to fix. This is not just the old pattern, it's tethered to all these other things. And as we have an increased capacity to allow all of that too, to simply move through the energy field. And as we do not adhere to it, those old patterns are transformed. Because we're not contributing our part of the Velcro. They just continue to move on through the field. We are that doorway, allowing things compassionately to move through. It's very important in these times that we take ownership for what we are creating. We take ownership for how we are showing up. Where is my focus of awareness? Honestly, what is my intention? Honestly, how am I reacting to what I'm aware of? Honestly. There are many tools that can be helpful in increasing this capacity, in addition to the minor little practices that can be quite profound in being helpful. But this is a time to seek out the things that can help us as we're building new foundations within us. Remember, as we're shifting and creating new energy architecture, what is it that we're using as the tools to do this? So be aware, be aware of that which you're bringing into your sphere with an intention for it to help you center, to help you align, to help you become more aware and adept at creating your baseline, what you're waking up with in the morning, what you're going to bed with at night, what you're walking down the street with, what you're shopping with, what you're driving with. Increasing the clarity as we increase awareness of our choice. When none of us are here in this lifetime, in this moment in humanity's existence, to continue the old. It's why we gather on this call. It's why we gather in this community. It's why we all know each other. We're not here to play small. We're not here to heal small. We're here to be all that we are, and to release the binds, to release that which binds us, to the old anchors that kept us from that freedom before. Don't wait. Don't wait to discover what your baseline is. When you needed it to be something different and it wasn't. This is a time that we have the tools to increase our capacity, and I strongly encourage every single one of you to do that. We're down into, I've said this before, we're down into the layers of the bedrock. These are very ancient, compacted, intense patterns. We need to give ourselves all of the help in dealing with these things that we can. So this is an act of self-care, self-compassion. I did a talk over the summer in one of the satsangs called Quieting the Mind Chatter. I strongly recommend that you listen to that video as well. Again, it's helpful for context in the larger picture. Again, helpful for awareness and clarity of how you're showing up. As we come into these holiday periods, there's especially a lot of old patterns connected to family, connected to stresses, connected to renewal, coming into the new year, and these sorts of things. There's a lot of intensities that come up at this time. So just be mindful, again, what you're reading, what you're watching, what you're listening to, where your attention is focused. It's my greatest hope that this is a good reminder for everybody and that it's helpful and supportive. And if any of you need anything, as the times continue to be intense, we come into this holiday period or at any time, please feel free to reach out. You're not alone, and I and others will be there for you. I'd like us to feel into our heart very deeply right now. Take a nice deep breath in. And just embrace that heart space for a bit. And now relax. Let's do that again and hold all of us in this community in our hearts as we breathe in. Hold us here for a moment. And now relax. Now let us hold humanity in our heart. Take a nice deep breath in. And with great compassion, we hold humanity here. Relax. And now all of planet Earth. Take a nice deep breath in. And just embrace all of Mother Earth. And relax. how we're showing up in this moment is important. We give thanks for the ability and the willingness to be here with such a loving intention. May we remember within our energy field what this feels like in any difficult moment. And call it forward in times of need. As you feel comfortable, you can wiggle your toes and your fingers. Open your eyes. I'm happy to take any comments if anybody wants to unmute themselves.
Mary, I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for creating this space for all of us. And this is very important. And I remember meditation since last Sunday. It was very important for me. The whole week I've been thinking about, okay, this is the thought, this is not me. Let's stay in this awareness. And it's been very helpful for me this week particularly. And also I'm worried about you a little bit because I'm feeling how sensitive the topic of suicide to you, and you trying to hold the space for your friends or people. So we just want to send you extra love and positive energy and vibe, and just hold this for you too. I just cannot even imagine what you're going through. And thank you so much for being there for all of us. Thank you.
That's very sweet. Thank you. You know, clearly part of the issue for me is that I not only know how it feels, in all the various layers of how difficult it can be in these times, how sharp the juxtapositions can be, how confusing it can be, how hopeless sometimes when we get down into the really deep old stuff it can feel. But I also know from experience what it feels like to try to die, try to leave, to try to stop it. And I know what it feels like to fail at that, and then have to live with the consequences of that. So I get all of it. I get it. I mean, I get it empathetically, compassionately. And in some ways, there's such a deep sweetness to this, because I know how, at the very core, in our innocence, it's so difficult, it's so confusing, and it's so sweet. It's a little like, you know, just holding a child, and just like all of this feels like holding a very sweet child and saying, I get it. I totally get it. And when I say holding the child, I mean all of these emotions, all of this confusion, not just the people. It's been more than 8 years since my suicide attempt. And I still rarely ever can talk about it without crying. Because it's all still shocking. It's all still fresh. There is still remnants of confusion and despair and those sorts of things that come up. And it's not unusual for me to think, you know, well, maybe I should try again. And I don't mean that in a, you know, I'm going to plan it out. It's just that I'm aware that that thought is still there. I'm aware of it. I don't do anything with it. I don't bond to it, but I'm aware that it's still in the field. Like this is a response to despair or to sadness or to confusion or to frustration or overwhelmedness. All of the things that we're coming out of, I'm aware that this is a thing that's associated with that. And now I'm starting to see it twice now. Out of the 2 of the 3 people, they're not people who have suicidal thoughts. They've never had suicidal thoughts. And suddenly, it's not just the little thoughts, it's an active planning because things have gotten so intense. And again, these are very enlightened people. So I know what this feels like. And it's given me great help to think about how I can be most helpful to others. And right now it feels very important to talk about creating approachable, manageable tools to help us build our baseline differently and our energy architecture as it changes, to just be aware of the undercurrents that are sort of flowing throughout our lives and be aware of our ability and our responsibility to shift that, to create something new so that we can be okay and we can help others be okay as well. Does anybody else have any comments or anything?
I'm a little bit speechless, but aware of what keeps coming up for me throughout the meditation and now is how those moments of despair or confusion feel so personal and private and alone. And equally running through the thread is, by virtue of your experience, you have something so profound to offer others. By virtue of your friends in this moment of struggling when they thought they were the last person on the earth that would face this, they've created an opportunity where you might very well have saved lives tonight. You might very well have called into our consciousness the awareness that we have choice, that we are constantly creating. What are we creating in this moment? And something I'm taking away from tonight is that I can never be alone again. I can never be separated from this message, from your experience, from your friend's experience, from the thread of this lifting up, this elevating, not hierarchically, just the opportunity to reframe and re-experience all of life can never be singular, can never be alone.
That's fantastic, Susan. Thank you.
And I feel, for maybe the first time in this group, a connection to everyone on this call. And I'm grateful for that.
Me too. Me too. I'm grateful for every one of you. And thank you for saying that. And I love you.
I love you.
Any other comments before we go? Okay. A very deep bow of thanks to everyone for being here tonight. I think this is an important discussion and topic to put out. So thank you for being here, and may our time together be of benefit to all beings. Namaste, namaste.